For 1,200 kilometers, it snakes underwater and brings with it much needed gas and a rising source of tension between major powers. Nord Stream 2 is its name. It starts in Russia, it ends in Germany, supplying vital energy to a country that is abandoning both nuclear power and coal. But the pressure is on Germany to drop the whole idea. This is Roundtable. Hello and welcome from me, David Foster. Some European Union countries believe that Nord Stream 2 gives Russia leverage over Europe, and they want pressure put on Moscow because of its human rights record. The Nord Stream 2 pipeline will carry gas from Russia to Germany. It is also a source of major geopolitical tensions, and to many Europeans, it's a 1,200-kilometer long, $11 billion mistake. Germany's chancellors defended the project against criticism that it hands undue influence to Russia. Last week, a group of European Parliament members signed a joint statement calling on Germany to abandon Nord Stream 2. A minister in the French government suggested the same thing. Among the reasons for their condemnation, the arrest and imprisonment of Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny. Several Eastern European states, along with the US, are also concerned that Nord Stream 2 will make Germany too dependent on Russia for its energy. So could the pipeline project be axed? And if not, how will it shape European relations with Russia? I am very pleased to be able to welcome to this roundtable out of Berlin in Germany, Thomas O'Donnell, Energy and Geopolitics Analyst at the Hertie School of Governance, that's in Berlin. We go to London and welcome Ulrike Franke from the European Council on Foreign Relations. And then to Moscow, capital of Russia, Dmitry Babich. We welcome back to the program, political analyst at Inosmi Internet Media Project. Great to have you all on. Thomas, let me start with you first of all. How much does Germany need this gas?
Germany would have no problems getting the same gas via the existing Soviet-era pipelines that flow through, on the one hand, Belarus and Poland, and on the other hand, through Ukraine. This is actually an alternative route. The intention of on the Russian side is to close down those routes. So it's not actually new gas. Of course, Germany needs the gas, but it's not a matter that this is the only way. Without this pipeline, they wouldn't get it.
Is Germany getting gas from the other newish pipelines, such as Turk Stream? I mean, is it vital that it has this Nord Stream if Russia cuts out the Ukraine, etc.?
Right. Germany, there's already the Nord Stream 1 pipeline that comes here from Russia, and the Nord Stream 2 will come parallel to it. So it gets some of that gas. It won't actually take any gas from Nord Stream 2. That's not the plan. That will just flow across Germany to the south from Nord Stream 2. From Turk Stream is just being connected into the Balkans, across the Black Sea and Turkey and into the Balkans. Russia is building that pipeline, and it's through Bulgaria and just connected into Serbia. So it'll be some time before that gas comes much farther north. Probably it will get to Baumgarten in Austria. But the main market for that gas is the Balkans and also Greece and Italy.
Ulrike, let me ask you then, as we bring up a map of where the pipeline goes from in Russia and where it lands, if you like, in Germany, let me ask you why, if Germany isn't going to be dependent upon this gas for its own purposes, why such a fuss about having it?
I think, so there's several reasons why the German government and German political decision makers want to keep this pipeline, or rather don't necessarily want to end it, because this is really the debate now. Should we just stop the project? And I think gas and commercial, financial reasons, they're a part of it, but I think they aren't actually the main rationale at this point. At this point, the argument for keeping the pipeline has more to do with keeping a link to Russia. So that's the argument that's being made in Berlin, that's being made by the political decision makers. So they are wary of basically cutting what they perceive to be, well, one of the very last links, last means of communication to Russia. So I don't think this is, at this point, primarily about the gas, as we just heard, or even about commercial interests, although I should add that there may be some liabilities, so financial liabilities, if the project is ended. But I think at this point, it really is mainly about keeping up this link of communication, but it is getting increasingly difficult to make the argument that this link of communication even helps.
Well, because so many other people, nations, United States, a great many people seem to suggest that maintaining this open line of communication with Russia is a bad thing, when you should be putting your foot collectively on Russia's throat with regards to its human rights record.
Yeah, I think you're right that a lot of German partners are against this pipeline at this point. A lot of Europeans, especially in the East, don't support the project anymore. But I think it's important to note that Germany basically has a tradition of having these links through pipelines with Russia and even the Soviet Union. So this idea really goes back to the Cold War, where even at the height of the Cold War, Germany kept these, commercial gas pipeline relations with the Soviet Union. And so this is where this idea comes from. But I think it is correct that it should be noted that at this point, it really doesn't feel like this project does give Germany any input or influence in Russia, because Russia these days really seems to do whatever it wants and doesn't seem to be listening to Europeans, be it about, expulsing European diplomats or indeed imprisoning Navalny. So the argument isn't the strongest one, but that's, I think, the one that's mostly argued in Berlin.
Have a think about this one. I'll come back to you on it, and explain to me in a little while why Germany thinks it's important to do this, when in fact it could be upsetting so many different people. Dmitry, want to bring you in. What's Russia's view on all of this?
Well, the reason why Russia invested so much money into building this project was because we care about our European clients. I think Thomas said very rightly that there are two existing pipelines, one of them built under the Soviet Union, the one that goes through Ukraine and Slovakia. But there were always problems with that pipeline because Ukraine was stealing the gas in the 90s. It continued to steal in the 2000s. Then we had this conflict. Ukraine says that it is at war with Russia. Russia doesn't agree, but Kiev keeps saying that. So
and then Ukraine turned the taps off. So that's what the problem is, isn't it? If Ukraine gets Bolshevik again, Russia would be unable to export its gas.
Well, if Ukraine decides to stop operating that pipeline, which is very possible, or if Ukraine decides to take some gas for its own needs, as it did in the year 2009, then our European clients will be upset. And of course, Russia will be upset because gas won't come. And when gas doesn't come, we don't get the payments. So this is the reason why under Boris Yeltsin in the late 90s, this other pipeline was built, which goes through Belarus and Poland. But again, first, this pipeline is not big enough. It does not have a sufficient capacity. Poland did not allow us to build a big one. And Poland did not allow us to make a connection between this northern pipeline and the pipeline that goes through Ukraine and Slovakia. So,
do you think, Dmitry, it's going to be scrapped?
You mean the Nord Stream 2 project?
The one we're concentrating on here. Do you think, I know you don't believe it should be, but do you think it will be scrapped?
I would not invest my own money into it. I think that economically and politically and culturally and historically, it certainly makes sense. But unfortunately, because of the ideology that reigns now in the European Union and in the United States, this ideology is very hostile to Russia, very hostile to China, very hostile to many nations. This pipeline may not be allowed to be finalized by Russia. This, of course, does not make any sense economically, because if you look at Eurasia, there is basically no Europe and no Asia. There is just one big continent. And of course, it makes sense for the industrial heart of that continent, for the West European countries, to use the gas from the rest of Eurasia, which is basically most of it is in Russia. As for the words of Ulrike that Russia is doing what it wants, in Russia we have a completely opposite view. Our impression is that the European
Well, I am going to
Union...
cut you because this has been a very, very long answer, Dmitry. In fact, 2 or 3 answers, and we've got to bring the other guests back in. We're going to be hearing from Angela Merkel, Thomas, in just a moment, but I want to ask you, bringing up Dmitry's point, if Ukraine turns the taps off again, if Nord Stream 2 is cancelled, what will happen to energy supply to Europe?
Let's put it this way. There are facts, and then there's the truth, right? It's how you marshal these facts and how you understand them. Look, the history has been that after the fall of the Soviet Union, Moscow, Putin in particular, used these pipelines, these old Soviet pipelines, as in a monopoly manner to make a lot of money, but also as a means of corruption to deal with oligarchs and enrich oligarchs in Ukraine and other countries they pass through as a way of elite capture. But something happened is that there's a development in these countries where they want to be independent. There's been rebellions. There's been the Maidan movement against the oligarchs. And suddenly it's turned into its opposite. Instead of a means of making money in Europe and along the way elite capture, now Mr. Putin felt it didn't work and he had to invade Ukraine. And what happens, oh my goodness, all my gas goes through Ukraine and I've just invaded the country. So Mr. Putin is very interested in getting that gas out of there. It is true, as Dmitry says, and that's why there's a mega infrastructure project, 2 big pipelines around the north that go only through water, not through any former Soviet-dominated or Russian-dominated countries, and 1 big pipeline that comes around the south through Turkey to enable Russia, Gazprom.
But what happens? So this is my real point. Sorry.
Oh, okay. Sure.
What happens if Nord Stream is cancelled? If Ukraine and Russia have another argument? What happens to the European energy supply?
Well, what happens is Europe is dependent on Russian gas. 40% or so comes from Russia. That's not going to change for a long time. They're trying to get away from that slowly. This means what happens is this should put a constraint on Mr. Putin if he wants to continue making money, not to escalate matters in Ukraine. Okay?
Okay, well, we will come back to Dmitry and give him a chance to respond to that in just a moment, but we're going to hear, before I go to you, Ulrike, from Angela Merkel, and it doesn't seem to appear that she's concerned, as we will now find out, about upsetting people across the Atlantic.
Das heißt, das müssen wir dann alles auf den Tisch legen.
We need to discuss whether we want to stop trading with Russia in the gas sector. What kind of dependence is tolerable? Furthermore, I find that these extraterritorial sanctions are a means that are not right, and there will also be different views than that of the Biden administration.
Und es wird auch mit der Biden-Administration unterschiedliche Meinungen geben. Es gab zum Beispiel.
So she doesn't think sanctions should work. We know that she wants to go ahead with this. Why is she prepared, Ulrike, to risk upsetting an incoming United States administration?
I think what's important to realize is that most of the upsetting has already happened, both with regard to the transatlantic cooperation, but also at the European level. So Warsaw, other Eastern Europeans, even the French now, a lot of Europeans have been arguing against the pipeline. So a lot of the upsetting, if you like, has already happened. And at this point, it's the thing is, at the moment, the debate in Germany, it's almost as if there is no one really arguing for the pipeline anymore. It's more a question of whether or not you're in favor of stopping it, because the pipeline is almost built, right? So there are some, I think, 160 kilometers missing of a pipeline that's over 2,000 kilometers long. So it's almost finished. And the big question isn't so much whether anyone thinks that the pipeline was a good idea in the first place. It's almost there already. I think 8 billion or so.
But why don't they
care?
Yet. Why don't they care what the Americans think, the Germans?
I don't think that they don't care. Of course they care. But again, there are different points to think about. And Germany, I think it's very clear, it has maneuvered itself in a situation where it's between a rock and a hard place. There are no good options left. Finishing the pipeline is going to upset even more the Americans, other Europeans, but ending it isn't a great idea either. Again, because so much has already been built, there are so many sunk costs,
Yes.
and this argument of cutting the links. So there is no good option yet, and this is why people such as Merkel don't, just say we're going to stop it, because that's not a great solution either. But it's not as if they don't care.
Dmitry, let me bring you back in. You can respond to what you heard from Thomas in a moment if you wish to, but let me ask you this. It's all about putting pressure, isn't it, onto the United States, what the US wants to do here, what it has wanted to do for some time, all part of a sanctions regime designed to squeeze Russia and to force it to acknowledge some of what is alleged to be its human rights abuses. Will it be feeling any pressure?
Well, okay, if everything is cancelled, if it becomes just a lot of scrap metal on the bottom of the Baltic Sea, it will not change anything in Russian politics. It will just make our relations with the European Union worse, because there are a lot of people in Russia, President Putin included, who still think that Europe is a friend and that Europe is after its own pragmatic interests, and that Europe can, resist the pressure of the United States. I do not quite understand why you keep asking about upsetting Americans. The agreement on building this pipeline was between Russia and Germany, and also several European gas companies, energy companies. The United States has no relation whatsoever to this project. So when it started imposing sanctions, that was really illegal. That was really against the law. Imagine Russia would impose sanctions on a pipeline between Mexico and the United States, or between Venezuela and the United States. It is the same kind of situation. So legally, I think Russia's position is pretty strong here. As for the arguments against this project, we have just heard them, and they're purely ideological. They have nothing to do with human rights. They're just about perceptions and ideologies. I mean, Thomas said, it's very important for me to say, just give me 30 seconds.
Thomas, you come in a second. Let Dmitry finish this sentence, then you can come back.
Yes, I will finish very quickly. Thomas said that there were rebellions in Ukraine against oligarchs. There was a rebellion in Ukraine, a coup against the legally elected President Yanukovych, who was elected in 2010. The United States and Germany accepted his victory, agreed that he was the president. He was deposed by a violent mob, the same kind that broke into the capital, just in Ukraine.
Hey, listen, you said you'd finish very quickly.
So this is the whole difference. And the reason why you are not letting me finish is also ideological. You don't want to hear the truth. You wanted to hear what Thomas had to say. But
Dmitry, actually, what I don't want is a history lesson going back about 10 years. What I want is for you to finish the question, your answer very quickly, so we can move on.
Yes, I'm not giving you a history a lesson. I'm just explaining you what happened. Russia will not be moved by the pressure, because there is nothing Russia can do. What is it exactly that the United States and the EU want Russia to do? We didn't, we didn't attack Europe. We didn't attack Ukraine. That's certainly not true.
Okay, I'm going to go to Thomas now. I'm going to go to Thomas. You said you'd be brief. So, Thomas, you want to come back onto this, and I know you do, too, Ulrike.
I'll just make what I would say a statement of fact. For whatever reason, countries decided after World War II that in Europe they weren't going to settle disputes by invading other countries and taking territory.
I don't want to go. I really don't want to go down this avenue.
I don't want to go into that either. I don't want to go into this either.
You're fine. Okay, well, let's move on.
Yes. Here's the situation. There's two sources of insecurity for Germany. One is Mr. Putin himself, who sends the gas, and he cannot be trusted, and many Germans here will agree with that. The number two insecurity is that the gas passes through war zones. We can argue about who's responsible for that war zone, but it passes through too. Now, Mr. Putin wants to remove the gas from that war zone that I would say he caused and send it directly to Germany. Germany has decided that this is a solution for European energy security. Bring it directly here. We'll deal with Mr. Putin. We can't do anything about Ukraine. I'm sorry. The Americans disagree, and the Poles and the Ukrainians and other countries disagree that, no, this opens up Ukraine. You're throwing them under the bus. So Mr. Putin does not risk his gas business with Europe if he decides to continue his aggression. This is the
Okay,
clash.
Ulrike, I'm sorry, Thomas. Same rules apply. If you go on too long, I'm afraid you have to stop and give somebody else a chance.
No, that's fine.
Ulrike.
That's fine. It's pretty simple.
I just wanted to pick up on one point specifically that Dmitry said about Nord Stream 2, namely that ending it now would not change anything. And on that, I really disagree, because, of course, if Germany was to cancel this pipeline now, especially because so much money has already been invested, it would send a message. The big challenge, though, for everyone involved is what kind of message exactly would it send? Would it have a big impact? Would it be worth it, given everything that you would be giving up? And this is the problem, really, because there are people arguing that because of the poisoning and now the imprisoning of Alexei Navalny, because of the expulsion of European diplomats, Nord Stream 2 should be cancelled, and I can understand this. But the question really is, would the message that this sends, would this be strong enough and be big enough? But I absolutely believe that it would change
Can I ask you this? Bring up something that Dmitry said. He said the United States had no right to interfere. It was as if Moscow was complaining about a pipeline between Mexico and the United States. Is the United States trying to put pressure on various European countries, Germany included, Germany appears to be ignoring that, to cancel this project, or at least to sort of keep the pressure on Russia? Is the United States, as Dmitry says, interfering?
Well, the United States has an interest in this pipeline not going forward. I think this is rather clear for various reasons. And yes, it is trying to, as allies and partners do, it is trying to influence its allies and partners, in this instance specifically Germany, to end this project. This isn't exactly unheard of. There are lots of issues. We have disagreements and conversations. I think here the important bit is that we may be talking about extraterritorial sanctions, and that is something that Europeans don't particularly like, because that is
indeed,
real
that's
pressure
what Merkel was
from the
saying.
outside. Yeah,
Angela Merkel was saying just that in the little clip we heard from her. Yes, Dmitry, very politely, please say what you want to.
Well, it is a fact that the United States threatened to impose sanctions and basically to destroy financially any companies, European or from third countries, that would participate in this project. And that's why there were technological problems. That's why the Swiss company, I think its name is Allseas, had to withdraw from the project. And this is, I'm sorry, pure banditry. It's as if Russia said that we would financially destroy companies helping to build a pipeline from Mexico to the United States. The United States
How
is
much
not
of a blow would it be to President Putin if this were cancelled, to his esteem as well as economically? Because although you said we care about our clients, it transpires that really what you mean is we need to get money from them, and that's why we care about them. How much of a blow would it be for the president?
It would not be a blow to him in any way, because everyone has seen what was going on. Everyone has seen this pressure. There was a lot of opposition in Russia to this project. A lot of people said we should rather concentrate on China and other potential customers.
Sorry, Dmitry, we have an issue with the connection. I'm very sorry about that. I wasn't trying to cut you off. I'm going to have to come to Thomas. We've got about two. Oh, Ulrike, yeah, you first, then Thomas.
Can I just one very brief point? Namely, I don't want us to focus too much, or the people watching this focus too much on the impact of the US influence here. Absolutely, the US doesn't want this project to continue.
Okay, well,
but it's very important that
Have
other
you got a final
Europeans
thought?
and Germans also have a problem here.
Okay, Thomas.
To your question about Putin, this would be a big blow to Putin. It's going to severely restrict his ability to bring Ukraine and Belarus back into his orbit in the way he would like to. That's the difference between between Berlin and Washington over what will be the strategy of the allies of NATO and of Europe and America to deal with Russia at this time. That's what this is about. And the European Parliament overwhelmingly agrees the project should be stopped, and many countries in Europe also agree it should be stopped. It's not just the United States. There's many other allies.
Where do we go from here? Dmitry, we got you back. Just a quick thought from you. Yeah, where's this going to end?
When the European Union imposed sanctions on Russia in 2014 because of the events in Ukraine, it had no impact whatsoever for 6 years. I think the same story will happen if they cancel this project. The problem is that Thomas does not understand what we can or what we can't do. With Ukraine, the only solution that Europe is pushing on Russia is just to abandon these two regions with a large Russian-speaking population and allow the Ukrainian regime to cut them off from Russia, which means from water, from electricity, from money, and to finish them off. Russia is not going to accept
And with
it.
that opinion, Dmitry, we have to say thank you very much indeed. It's not that I want to cut you off, it's just the clock has ticked down various technical issues, but we thank you very much indeed from Moscow for your thoughts, Dmitry Babich. Ulrike, Franke, thank you very much indeed. And Thomas O'Donnell, we appreciate your time on the programme too. From me, David Foster, thank you, wherever you are, for watching this edition of Roundtable. We hope to have your company on another occasion. Until then, goodbye.